Hola, Cules, and welcome back to Barca Football's weekly podcast, the relaxed version of the podcast, at least. This is where we will talk a bit more about the club affairs, the recent rumblings and the rumors, and all that good stuff. Maybe some tactics here and there, but no, if you want a more relaxed atmosphere, this is the place to be as a Barca fan, as a fan of Barca football as well. Now, the international break at the moment of recording is nearly done. So we'll have Barca face Girona tomorrow, actually. So that's a big to look forward to. But in the meantime, let's just focus on what has happened in the week leading up to this clash, leading up to the end of the international break.
It's a long break, but now it's going to be crazy with like games every 3 days. We started very well, but now these 6 games or 7 games that we have back to back might make the season very challenging, depending on how we go, the scores, the results, the injuries, non-injuries, what have you. So it'll be interesting to see how Flick manages this spate of games, given the thin squad that we have. So yeah, happy that we are back with no injuries, hopefully, and that with Girona we can field the best possible side that we can. Obviously, there are notable exceptions and so on, but some good news. Gavi coming back into training. Pedri seems like doing well. Lots of news about him and physical training and all of that stuff. And then hopefully Dani Olmo and Rafinha keep doing what they've been doing for a while, along with Lamine Yamal. So yeah, lots to unpack this week. I think there was a lot that happened behind the scenes. So yes, biggest news: Barca's wage bill. It went up. So we'll touch upon that.
I think the first thing that we have to talk about is the wage bill. Now, obviously, we're not financial experts. We don't really come here and claim to know better and claim to be someone who can fix Barca's wage bill. Because this has been an ongoing issue, right? It has been an issue for a number of years now. It has been getting worse as we went into the season, right? So uh, now it seems, according to the latest report, that bars are finally getting this in order, right? The wage bill, the limit has increased for about from about 200 million left to about 400 million. And that gives you a lot more leeway to spread out the cost and give players their due and so on and so forth. When we look at into that, it does seem that like Laporta is doing something actually. So we've been very critical of Laporta, obviously, and many fans have been as well. We do think that he's more of a politician than he is necessarily someone who's dealing with the sporting side of things, and that may be true, but something seems to be going Dev, and we have to give him due for that. So, what is your take on the whole wage bill thing?
No, I agree. Think about it. When Laporta came in, I think the year that he came in, it was 98 million in the summer. And then by the winter, it was minus 144 million. That means we had overshot our spending by crazy amounts, and there was debt and so on. And from there, obviously, with minus 144, there was no other option but to go and sell stuff. So they did the famous Palancas and we sold and all of that stuff. And so it, I think, went up to about 650 million or something like that the next season and we got Lewandowski and Kunde and Vinia and all these players who came in, which was a big investment from Laporta and something that he did conjured up to keep the club relevant. And it paid off because I would say Xavi won the league for sure, and that nobody expected us to win the league at that time. So I think we can criticize it, but it had its positive so-called effect and so on. But as we have seen after that famous Palanca episode last year, Barca only spent about 3.5 million for Romeo. Everybody else came on free. And then Vitor Roque in December came about 40, 45 million, depending on which report you go by. Doesn't matter if it's 40 or 45, but yeah, they spent some money. And then this transfer window, it was labeled to be amazing because we would get back to 1:1 and spend a lot of money and so on and so forth. But nothing happened. And ultimately, we ended up with one signing, which was Dani Olmo. Some say it's 60 million, some say it's more. We don't know. We didn't see the paperwork, but let's assume it was 60 million. So two transfer windows have been really tight from a Barca standpoint, and they have knowingly not spent. And at the same time, a lot of people have been let go. A lot of wage bill has actually accrued down. So if you think about 98 to minus 144 to 650, then earlier this year it was about 204, 210, something like that. And now in euros, it's about 420, or in dollars is about 470. But the only difference between this time and the, the last time when we pulled all the levers was last time the wage bill increased because we sold assets. This time, the wage bill increased on its own because we cut down spending. There was no sale of assets, so as to say. We haven't yet figured out Barca Studios and all of that stuff that's happening. And to be honest, there's a lot of advertising that has been signed up lately. If you see, I think Nokia came along as a partner. Nike is still being discussed. Carrier came along as a partner. So they are signing a lot of partners with the by Barca and the project that is there with the stadium. So air conditioning expert and catering expert and everybody is an expert. And so obviously they're signing it, and that's good. That's what is required. They have been doing that. Obviously now these will be booked into next year and years later. But to what you rightly said, that if it is 470 million in dollars or 420 euros, doesn't really matter. About 400, as you rightly said. And we sign the Nike deal whenever that happens, we will come back to the pre-pandemic levels of around 650 and so on. But now, the large salary earners are gone. And by end of this year, or next year maybe, the payments that were pending, like players like Messi, lots of players, right? And transfers that have not been paid for, I think those will be cleared out to a large extent. And then if you see the squad, right, with the exception of, let's say, Frankie de Jong and Lewandowski, everybody's under that 20 million mark gross ballpark, which is not a bad place to be for a club of its size. And if Barca can hold that with the revenues that they have ongoing, I think it's a sustainable model. Now, the challenge will be new players are coming up. So there is Lamine has to be re signed, Gavi has to be re signed, Pedri has to be re signed. And everybody who has to be re signed will want more money. And how does the club balance that? How do they not go back to the past where they would give more and more money to keep the players happy and then we reach where we reach? It will be interesting to see how the club manages that because the kids that were kids are now becoming more prominent. And so they will want more money to stay. It's as simple as that. So it'll be interesting to see how Deco pulls that off next season. But credit where it's due, as you rightly pointed out, we are critical of Laporte and rightfully. But on this, I think it's been a miraculous salvage operation that he has done. From minus $144 million of wage bill to where it is now, and having cleared a lot of the short-term stuff, unpaid salaries, unpaid debt, you've got to give it to him. He does it in his own way. People don't like it, but man loves the club, and he has done probably what is the best. And if he can get back into 1:1 without further selling more assets, and with a Nike deal which is proverbially large, hopefully they're saying it will be the largest. Somebody says 120, somebody says it's 110. We don't know what the number is. We'll know when it happens. And somebody can take care of the Barca Studios kerfuffle that happened. So whether it's Aramark, whether it's somebody else, I think it's a remarkable salvage operation. You may dislike it and the way it was done and all that stuff, but where Barca were to here, to bring it back without having to sell anyone really important, like they didn't sell Pedri, Gavi, or nobody, none of the so-called important players were sold. I think you got to give credit to the man there.
Hmm. Yes, I would agree with that absolutely because we are very quick to criticize not just Laporta, but the players and the coaches. We always find scapegoats, right? It's easier that way. If you have a clear scapegoat, if you have a clear guy who's responsible for all your troubles, it's much easier to handle that because we're all in our heads. We're like, okay, if we somehow get rid of this guy, if this guy starts performing better in his role, everything will be fixed. But the reality is much more complex than that, right? And it's the same thing with Laporta as well. And as you said, we have to give him due because yes, he's doing something well, right? It's not all of it, right? There's some murky things, shady things that he has been doing behind the scenes, probably, and he is there to do what's best for himself as well. Of course, for the club, and he loves the club, but he wants to do well for himself as well. So it's that part of human nature, I would say. But yeah, as you said, we have the Nike deal, we have the new stadium, and we do have Barca Studios and all those deals. So when that comes together, in theory, it should come together very soon or sooner rather than later. Barca should be in a very promising financial situation. But as you also point out, David, I like this point. If you want to be a club that doesn't buy superstars, but you kind of mold them, develop, you will eventually still reach a point where those players will be superstars, ideally, right? But once they are superstars, you have to pay them what they have earned, right? And if they are superstars, they will likely be on higher wages. And that's only fair. That's only fair because if they do reach those levels, they actually propel you to the elite levels. You have to reward them for that. So it's a double-edged sword in some sense.
But more than that, I think Laporta is the consummate professional and politician. I think it was very
Mhm.
calculated. He came in the first year, he did something. Second year, he knew he had to take a calculated risk. He sold, he raised
Mhm.
the money, he got 5 or 6 good players, which could last the club for a while. And then he shut shop completely for 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now, by December, if he can close the Nike deal and we are back to, let's say, 600, 650, whatever, you
Mhm.
can bet your high horse Laporte is going to get someone
Yeah.
really big to make that statement signing and go into another term. It was just a strategy that I'm going to save this money. I'm going to bring this back within this time. And then right on time, there will be a name. What name? I don't know. It's Liao or Haaland or whatever. You don't know. So we don't know. There's no point speculating. But you can bet that he will try very hard to get couple of statement signings in the next transfer window, which will help his bid for continuation as the
Mhm.
president he
Mhm.
wants. So I think that'll be very interesting for the fans. Obviously, a lot depends on this season and the gamble that he has taken, because if this season goes well, like has till now, great. But if it doesn't, this is Barca. People will forget everything that, okay, we didn't have the money or what have you.
Mhm.
If cannot continue this and we don't win anything, then he has pressure. Then he has a lot of pressure and a lot of other candidates who are waiting on the wings to take over or want to take over. I'm not saying that they will be better than him because, frankly speaking, none of them espouse that much confidence, but you never know. So, yeah, it's going to be super interesting how this season pans out with Flake and then what Laporta does in the summer that's coming.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see because we don't know in what financial situation we'll actually see Barca next summer. But yes, theoretically, if he does fix the finances and then gets to that next summer in a healthy manner where Barca are actually stable and have the money to spend, more power to him. If he's earned that, he can go and sign someone. He can sign Haaland if he can. Obviously,
Good for
there's still
us.
a yeah, for us it's great. It will be entertaining at least. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, go back to that moral point where should we spend all that money on one player or not? But we'll discuss that if that actually happens next summer. But we started talking about young players becoming superstars. And I think we can touch upon both Gavi and Lamine in this instance. But let's start with Gavi there, because Gavi has been a huge part of what Barca represent. He's been a huge part of Barca's foundation as a team. And then he got injured, sadly, and he's been away for a very long time. But now we're seeing a report, okay, Gavi is actually back in training. Gavi might actually be seen on the pitch much sooner than expected. Now, there is a question: should he actually be thrown into the fire as soon as possible? We would argue probably not, but it would be lovely to see him because as a player, as a cultural presence in the team, he brings so much, especially for this Flick team that is that's screaming for a Gavi type player in the squad, right? He, in theory, the Gavi that we know, the Gavi pre-injury was a fantastic player. We know all about him. He has the technical and the physical attributes. He has the mentality that we need. He's a player that we have sorely missed. There's no two ways about it. Now, putting Gavi into this Barcelona side, it does really feel like that new signing, right? And we knew this would happen. The media would hype Gavi up as a new signing because we didn't have any signings anyway. So that this is apart from Olmo, of course. So of course that was bound to happen, and yes, it was quite expected. But it does feel like a new signing because Gavi has been off for so long, and then once he does come in, his impact is almost guaranteed. And I want to touch upon this because the cultural presence he brings, the mentality, the sheer force of nature that Gavi is on the pitch, not just with the ball, off the ball, in the locker room, outside of the locker room, everywhere. Gavi is such a persona, and Barca need those personas on the pitch if they are to continue this kind of steamroll effect that we have. I know it's only been 4 games and it's very early, and now this international break might break the momentum. We'll see what happens. Maybe it doesn't. Hopefully it doesn't, but maybe it does. And Gavi would be someone who stirs the fire a little bit again and puts Barca back into the steamroll mode, into that snowball. So hopefully that happens. Now, obviously, we don't want to rush Gavi. If he's not 110% fit, he should not be playing. That's just as simple as it is. But yeah, let's go into this a bit more, Dev. I give you my thoughts, but would love to hear yours as well.
Obviously, there are some players who stand out. Gavi, Araujo are players who are leaders. You can make it out on the field, and you need those characters. He's a great player in a situation today in Barca where we don't really have great players in that position. Nobody can do what he really does. And on top of that, the squad is pretty thin. If you think about the games that are coming up, especially in Champions League, you will need that kind of experience, right? Casado is good, but he's too young. So yeah, having him would be great. I absolutely am no medical expert, so I don't know what happens in an ACL. So hopefully he's not lost a step. Hopefully he can come back and slot in like it was, but it can also be that it takes him some time to become that Gavi again. What I'm happy about is that the recovery has gone so well. He's already training, which is great. Nobody expected it in September. And knowing Flick, probably he will use him in small bits and pieces, ease him in gradually into the big matches. It's the run from February till May that matters. So I think this time is good to ease people in with whatever. So very excited about Gavi coming back. And it will be interesting to see what Flick does in that midfield when he does come back. What role does Gavi play? Is he part of the double pivot? Is he something else? Because we are also hearing De Jong is coming back in about 2 weeks' time. I'm super happy about Ansu Fati's news as well. They seem to be both back. I would love to see them actually back on the field when it's right for them. There's no need to rush, I feel. But sooner or later it's going to happen. And then hopefully they can withstand it and hopefully they can grow from there.
Absolutely. And this is one of those instances where the international break helps you a bit because you get that rest from the league games, and those players get a bit more time to recover if they are near their return date anyway. So in this instance, okay, having a break here helps us because it kind of bridges that gap between De Jong coming back or Gavi coming back. So we'll see what happens. But yes, I would agree. Absolutely. Ease them in and then see where they can actually contribute. Let's go with Lamine next, Dev, because Lamine made some comments that were quite interesting. The people are starting to compare him with Messi. And we know where this leads you, right? Because so many players before Lamine have been compared to Lionel Messi. And every single one of them has failed to live up to anything close to what Messi is or was. And it's pretty natural because you can't compare players to Messi. Messi is Messi and he will always be one of a kind. So that is unhealthy, especially for those youngsters. But Lamine said something that's quite interesting because he said, okay, I like the comparison, but I also want to be Lamine Yamal. I don't want to be Lionel Messi because that's impossible. I want to be Lamine Yamal, but I like the comparison. So he's thriving off of that comparison because he knows, okay, people are starting to recognize my talent. They're starting to appreciate me for who I am, for the player I am. And for such a young player to have this kind of mentality on top of the ability that he's been demonstrating so far, it feels like such a unique personality to have, unique player profile to have. And it's so cliche to say, but we are so blessed to have him.
If you think about it, just his media soundbite, they sound very mature for his age. He's still 17 years old because this is a very unforgiving world for them. That ability to manage that expectation, that media, the scrutiny, and everything, and still perform without losing focus of what matters is critical. And at this age, it's very hard. He's really young. I do feel that there's too much media attention on him right now for a 17-year-old. I'm sure the club also noticed it, but I'm not the person to comment on that. So they'll manage what they'll manage. The number of eyes or the awareness or the noise around you is consistent, and that can be hard for anybody to concentrate and so on. So hopefully, they're doing what they need to do to mitigate that. And he is, as you rightly pointed out, maybe he is level headed. And if that happens, that's good. Regarding comparisons with Messi, the less done, the better. Nobody will be Messi. Nobody will be Maradona. Nobody will be Pele. Nobody will be Franz Beckenbauer. Nobody will be anybody. They will be their own players. Let him just develop into that. Obviously, he has a successful string of games and provided a lot of assists and so on. So that's being talked about, which is great. But he has so many things that he has to improve. He has to improve on his speed. He has to improve on his finishing. He has to improve on so many aspects of his own game, right? Hopefully that works out and that works out in our favor. And more than anything, hopefully he can keep himself fit and safe because we have seen far too many talented kids from the Masia who have derailed between 17 to 22 and never reached the level that they could have. He is the person who has to himself take care of that. But yeah, a precocious talent. So some say Barca are lucky, but Barca also invest. in this.
Mhm.
So yes, it's easy to say the Barca got lucky with La Masia, but the point is they've invested massively in this for years, and that's what you get out of that investment. Barca need a franchisee player for sure, which they don't have right now. So hopefully it's him or the Fernandez brothers or it's Ansu Fati reborn again, and you you just never know. And with that, I would like to also talk about Ansu for a little bit, and I wanted your point of view that we've heard about Ansu coming back to fitness, but the poor boy, like every time he comes back to fitness, something happens and he is injured again. But and you have talked about his position as a nine or what have you. uh, Flick seems to be taking a bet on him. Where do you think he will play him? And do you what's your like take on this?
I think Ansu as a profile, so speaking tactically in terms of flex structure, I think that he's still more of a left winger than he's a number nine. I think Flick's number nines are very specific, very complete, even very. They have certain attributes that we don't know if Ansu will have once he comes back. But as a inverted forward of the left side, like he used to be, like more of a like a Ferran Torres in a sense, right? When you think of Ferran Torres as a left winger, you don't think of him as a creator, a playmaker. You think of him as a runner who's near the box, who will be inside the area, who will smell goals, who will move and position himself well. That is Ansu Fati. Now, Ansu does have some attributes that could kind of transition him to the number nine role. However, at this very moment, from the very little information that we have about the current Ansu Fati profile or his physical state or his mental state, we don't know what kind of player will come back, obviously. But on the very limited information that we do have, I think he fits that Gnabry type of player that Flick used to have at Bayern, for example. Well, if he comes back and plays as a left winger, we do have some sort of a reference point to go back to, right? And I feel like he will thrive more as a left winger until we decide, okay, he is physically and mentally ready to transition to something else. Because he does have the elements like ball striking lethality, he has the movement, he has the even the link up play. The physicality would be my biggest concern, right? So how fit is he? Can he sustain pressure from the back? Can he run for prolonged times? But all that plays a crucial part in the equation of the number nine role. So at this very instance, I would say Ansu Fati is more of a left winger under Flick than he is center forward. And I also think Flick thinks the same. I know we've seen a report of him as a nine. It's possible, but I also, when you think about Vitor Roque was loaned out, we do have Dani Olmo as well. I feel like Hansi Flick looked at Roque, looked at Ferran Torres, looked at Ansu Fati. He decided, okay, Ansu and Ferran fit these type of players that can play as a left winger more than center forward, and I will keep them, and Vitor Roque will go out because there's no space for him. And in that sense, I would still say, okay, Fati comes back, he will play as a left winger at first because that is also the better way to go about it because he needs to be eased in. It's better to ease in a player in a role that's more familiar to them and then see how they react, see how they can perform. Can they exceed expectations? Can they actually be at that minimum level or the expected or required level to play? And then if they exceed those expectations and if they can show more than we expected, then yes, we can actually talk about and discuss him transitioning to a number nine role.
My only hope is that he gets on the field and gets to score some goals and have a few good games before and doesn't get another unfortunate injury. That would just kill all his like he's been through such a tough time. Hopefully he catches a good break. He deserves a good break. If anybody deserves a good break, that boy deserves a good break. So hopefully he gets that this season and with a supporting manager that can help a lot. So hopefully that happens. Two more things and then maybe wrap up. I did want to talk about Lewandowski a little bit because nobody notices it, but quietly, he is the third most effective striker that we've had in the history of Barcelona. Like it was Suarez, Messi, Suarez, and then it's basically Lewandowski. And one doesn't realize it because of all the chaos that's happening in Barcelona this year. But for all his flaws, you've got to give him credit that at the age that he came in, he's done fairly well for the club and done what he was really brought in to do. I don't see that many number of players scoring 70 odd goals in the two seasons that he has been.
I think those is in his late Cristiano Ronaldo era when he has a stinker of a game, but he will score goals. It's just like
Yeah,
that. It's what he does well and what he will always do well. So if you put him in those positions where he can actually do just that and nothing else, he'll be absolutely
do
fine.
that.
And we did expect this from Lewandowski because he was such a big name. And yes, those poor performances last season, throughout the season, and all that stuff, it doesn't tarnish his legacy because we know what kind of player he is. We know what kind of player he has been throughout his career. And a couple of bad games won't change the history that he's managed to write as a player, as a legend of the game, as one of the best number nines of the generation, even. So that those attributes stay with you. So no matter your age, if you can play to his strengths, you can minimize the distances that he has to cover and minimize everything that he does outside of the box, he'll be absolutely fine. And I think Flick is doing that because if you look at the Barca's main chance creation this season and all the expected goals values and all the shots that we've been taking, the vast majority come from that 6 yard box. So that little box inside the penalty area, that's where majority of our chances come from or rather end up in that area. And that's where Lewandowski thrives. And he will put away those chances because he is that kind of a player. And just to tie into Ansu Fati as well, Ansu Fati will love because despite all of his struggles, all of his physical and mental struggles as well that he has gone through, he still has he historically he converts most, if not all, of those high XG chances. So if you put Ansu Fati in a situation where he will get fed those balls, where he will be in optimal positions to score, he will score. The same with Lewandowski. And this system maximizes that or has been maximizing that so far. We don't know if this will be sustainable. We sure hope it can be. But if it is, players like that will absolutely love flex system. And that goes for Lewandowski, who we know will probably be able to keep up this insane rate that he's been scoring. So I'm hoping to see more. And I do genuinely believe that this Lewandowski is the Lewandowski that will stay, that will keep doing this. And it gives you hope. It gives you ease for at least this season. But then from next season onward, we might have to start thinking about okay, so who actually comes in and replaces this guy because he is so influential, he's so big, but he's also so old. It's weird to say, but a 30-something-old guy, it's not old, but in football terms, it is quite old, especially for
Absolutely.
a striker. So
It's
yeah,
very,
we'll
it's
see.
very interesting, the transition from Lewandowski to whoever. Die-hard Barcelona fans will want a Haaland or whatever, but we'll see.
Yeah,
Anyway, this brings us to the last topic of the day, and that's Rafinha. And we have talked a lot about Rafinha, but wanted to just touch about it. I think he's having the best time of his career in Barcelona right now. I don't think we saw this player even in Leeds or, to be entirely honest, even with Brazil, but I think he's found something within his groove and in the confidence that the club has shown in him. And he's a captain now. I think Flick obviously depends a lot on him. So I think it's rubbing off, and he's actually bringing it on the pitch and maybe actually evolving as a player. There are these players who, who just who put in that effort, who put in that graft, who put in that they have the basics, and then they feed off that energy, and then they become better over time. And if this Rafinha continues, he can really be a marquee player for Barcelona for the years to come.
I'm not sure if he's much different than he used to be. He's more optimized, so he's more maximized even in this system. It's okay, now we're playing to his strengths. Now we're not forcing him to be a wide dribbler, creator type of player. Now we actually use him the way he's meant to be used. And all of a sudden you have a completely rejuvenated player. That's why we as a tactics page, the tactics people, very objective people, analytical people, that's why we talk about profiles and stability to systems and all that stuff because that's how you get the most out of players. A good system will always make a bad player look much better, and a bad system will make a great player look rubbish. We've seen that firsthand at Barcelona numerous times, right? Your Griezmann, the Coutinhos, and the Belays, they were all kind of sub-optimized in our system. Right? So that's the opposite is happening to Rafinha just now, and I'm loving it. But yes, to your point, his mentality, his graft, his dedication, and all of that plays a huge role because he's a player who's actually competing with Lamine Yamal. And Lamine Yamal being the player that we know he is and the player that we know he can become in the future, it can be a bit disheartening, especially when you consider, okay, I'm a grown adult and my competition is a 17-year-old. And not only is he my competition, he's actually outperforming me in every single aspect of the game. Not, I'm exaggerating here, but you get the point, right? It can be a bit frustrating and disheartening but even if it is that for Rafinha, he seems to be channeling that into becoming better. He's not frustrated. He's not lashing out. He's not unhappy. He's the opposite. He seems to be thriving in this chaos and this competitive, I don't know, environment or something. So I feel like he is captain material right? Because he's showing those attributes. more power to him, and I'm really happy about Rafinha. And we will do more content out of Rafinha because he does deserve more content. He deserves more praise. And long may it continue, Dev.
So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoy this format. If you don't, like, let us know. We'll keep tweaking. But we like talking about it in this manner because it feels like we can cover these things. Otherwise, there are always tactics and boards and final third and zone 14 and what have you. This is fun because this is part of the club as well, and it gives us an opportunity to think about it and read it all together. And like always, stay safe, be ready for the weekend. Let's hope we win against Girona. We've lost against them the last two, and we win the next set of games without any injuries. And with that, Visca El Barca.